This is FE Peer Review, the Flat Earth Peer Review channel. The date is August 7th, and this video is with regard to a Blackpool Tower observation done by Explore the Plane. It was reposted by Sleeping Warrior, and it's been under discussion by Ruhif and Blue Marble Science. I wanted to add a couple of little ideas I had about it. Before I get into that, though, I wanted to send out a little message to anybody living in that part of the world, including Explore the Plane. It would be really great if we could get this same location observation repeated, so 5 or 6 times on different days under different atmospheric conditions. I would be really interested to see to what extent refraction may or may not be playing a role in what we see on that distant view of the mountain behind the tower. Explore the Plane, Sleeping Warrior, Ruhif, and Blue Marble Science are all engaging in a vigorous discussion about this particular photograph, which was taken by Explore the Plane. It shows Blackpool Tower with Red Crease Mountain in the background and Formby, the coast of Formby in the foreground. I thought I'd add my 2 cents. Why not throw my cap in the ring with everyone else? But I thought I might come at it in a slightly different way. Before I get into what I'm doing, though, I just wanted to send a quick message out to everybody. There's a structure here to the right of the Blackpool Tower, and I'm curious what it is. I haven't been able to identify it on the map. I thought if any of you can recognize it and tell us what it is, it might be useful. There are also a couple of smaller towers off to the right, which would be useful to identify. Anyway, I thought I might come at this a little bit of a different direction. I thought I have my favorite 3D modeling program I use for my architecture work. It's called SketchUp. It's not the ideal tool for this purpose, but I think it'll work for what I'm going to try to do. I'm basically going to create 4 structures. A mountain in the background, the tower, the Formby coastline, and the observation point Thurstaston Hill. And I'm going to try to recreate this from this. I'm going to try to recreate the image of this photo using my object. So rather than trying to start with what we think we know about the Earth and argue about, I'm just going to try to recreate this photo. So I've gone into SketchUp, and I've got everything laid out here. I'll take you on a quick walk through it. The intersection of the red, green, and blue lines is called the origin, and that's a fixed point in SketchUp. And that's where I'm going to be putting the observer. And then these dashed lines represent the distances away from the observer. This here, where my mouse is circling, that's the dunes at Formby. Here in the middle of the screen is Blackpool Tower. And at the upper right is Red Crease Mountain. So I'll zoom in here. Zoom in here and show you this little object represents Thurstaston Hill. The base is mean sea level, and the top represents the top of the hill, or the observation point. I guess I should make it another 2 meters taller for the person standing there. Anyway, that's Thurstaston Hill, and the base is mean sea level. Over here are the dunes at Formby. Same thing. The bottom of this surface, that would be this lower line here, represents mean sea level, and the top is the top of the dunes, which I estimated from Google Earth at about 15 meters elevation. Over here we find the tower. This block here that's highlighted in blue is the ground surface, so mean sea level is the bottom edge. And that surface there represents the roadway in front of the building. And then the tower itself has a base and a restaurant level. And finally, for the mountain, I've just got a simple rectangular block. Same thing, the bottom of it is mean sea level, the top is the top of the mountain. Now, at the moment, I've got them the correct distances from each other horizontally. I have made no effort to align them in any respect vertically. I've put the bottoms of everything at the same elevation. So I guess you could say this is just preliminary. This is not trying to draw any kind of conclusion, but I guess you could say that I'm starting by assuming a flat plane by putting everything with mean sea level on the same horizontal line. Now the other thing I've done is I've created a view that's got a fixed viewpoint, which the viewpoint, the camera location is the camera location, that's the top of the hill, and the view is looking off in the direction of the mountain. So I will click on my scene tab up here, and that will take us to our fixed viewpoint. So what I've got is top of the hill right here, the Formby Dunes in the foreground, Blackpool Tower in the middle ground, and the mountain in the distance. And as you can see, the relative vertical positions of these things do not match the photo. We've got the dunes are not covering the base of the tower, and the mountain is extending above the top of the tower. In the photograph, we have the dunes concealing the base of the tower, and we have the top of the mountain at approximately the level of the restaurant. Back to my model. So as you can see, the vertical positions of things do not yet match the tower. So what I'll do next, and I won't do this live on camera because it's kind of tedious, is I will move these vertically so that from this view they align vertically with each other, just as in the photo. Before I do that, I'm going to do one thing. I'm going to make a small adjustment to this photo, to this view. We should really be right. I'm just going to try to refine our position a little bit more, because we shouldn't be seeing Thurstaston Hill here in front of us. We're on Thurstaston Hill, which means it should basically be where your chair is. Yeah, there, now it disappeared. So right where it disappears, right about there. That would be a more correct location, so I'm going to update that. So that's our viewpoint. Camera, dunes, tower, mountain. Okay, so we're here with our 4 objects. They're aligned along one path, but at the correct distances from each other. But we made no effort to try to align them vertically yet. I've put the bases of each of these objects at the same elevation that represents mean sea level at each location. And as we see, the dunes at Formby are not blocking the tower base, and the mountain is rising up above the top of the tower, which is not the way it looks in the photo. We've got the dunes blocking the base of the tower and the mountain below the top of the tower. So what I'm going to do, let me go back to the photo. We've got 2 sight lines that we need to follow. One is from our location on top of Thurstaston Hill. The sight line passes over the dunes and intersects the tower just above the base of the tower. The second sight line starts at Thurstaston Hill, passes through the restaurant, and hits the top of the mountain. So I'm going to draw those 2 sight lines. I've actually already drawn them. I will show you the 2 sight lines. Let's look at the first one, line 1. It starts top of Thurstaston Hill, right there, and it continues, and it passes over the dunes. It just touches the top of the dunes. You can see that that's right at the top of the dunes there, and it continues on to the tower. And as you see, when we get to the tower is too high up, as it was in our previous view, which I'll go back to. So there it is. The base of the tower should be hidden by the dunes, and it's not. So I will lower this tower so that the base lines up with our sight line. You can see that dashed line, how it passes through. So now if I go back to our viewpoint, we should see that the dunes just cover the base of the tower and the ground on which the tower is built. And so it does. The orange is the dunes at Formby, and the base of the tower is now hidden. So we will go back and do the same adjustment for the second sight line. Our sight line starts at the tower. It starts at Thurstaston Hill. It passes through the restaurant of the tower, and it reaches out to the mountain beyond. And the mountain is currently above our sight line. So the mountain needs to come down. Top of the mountain should be on that sight line. You can see where this line intersects the top of the mountain now. So now if I go back to our view, the mountain should be appearing just behind the tower with the top of the mountain at the restaurant level. And there it is. We're standing on top of Thurstaston Hill. The dunes cover the bottom of the tower, and the mountain drops just down behind to align with the restaurant. Now our four objects are aligned in the correct distance from each other and at the correct elevations relative to each other to match this photograph here. So what I've done in arranging the objects this way was I have gone from top down rather than bottom up. I have given no thought to what plane or surface these objects are resting on, and I've simply taken the top elevations of each object and adjusted them so that they overlap in a way that matches the photo. What remains to be done then is to see what this tells us about the ground plane on which these objects are resting, and that's what I will work on in the next step. Okay, so what I've done here is I have endeavored to draw an arc that connects my observation point at mean sea level, I should say mean sea level below my observation point to mean sea level below the mountain in the distance, and that arc should pass through mean sea level at each of the 2 points in between. Now, SketchUp's a pretty good tool for this kind of work, but it's not the ideal tool. If I had AutoCAD on my computer, that would be better. So the arc that I have been able to get in there is approximate. It's not a perfect fit, but it's a pretty good fit. So we'll start by taking a look at the origin. It starts right at the center there, and it passes through the base of the mountain. That's a tight fit. That started it and ended it exactly where I wanted. But it's slightly off at the two in-between points. As you can see, it should be passing through the base of the land mass here. You see, SketchUp doesn't actually handle curves very well. It draws curves as a series of straight lines. So every curve in SketchUp is an approximate, every seeming curve is an approximation made up of straight lines. Anyway, so it's a little off here. In terms of actual dimensions, it's 17 meters off from where it should be. And at the dunes at Form B, it's also slightly off, I think a little less. At the dunes at Form B, it is 9.5 meters off. So it's not exact, but it's a pretty close fit between those 4 points. So that arc now, SketchUp tells us that that arc has a radius, looking up here in the upper right, that arc has a radius of 7926146. That would be meters. And as a radius, that would be the meters, the radius of the Earth. If the Earth is round and this approximation that I've drawn here is reasonably accurate, then we had a radius of 7,926,000 meters, or 7,926 kilometers. That is, and let's go back and look at our pretty picture again to show the relationship of the various parts. That dimension, okay, there we see Form B in the foreground, the tower, and the mountain in the background, and these do match our photo. There's our photo. So the radius that we got for that arc is a little higher, a little larger than the generally accepted radius of the Earth, which is 6,371 kilometers. We got 7,926. So none of this in any way accounts for any atmospheric refraction. This has been a purely geometric exercise based on that photograph. If we look at the apparent, what's sometimes referred to as the apparent radius of the Earth, 6,371 meters, sometimes referred to as 7/6, 7/6. That would be the formula that's frequently used by land surveyors and is an approximation assuming some additional refraction. Divide this by 6 and multiply it by 7, and we get 7,432 kilometers. And what I found with our arc in our model is that it came to 7.46/6 Earths. So what we are seeing is an arc that would suggest the possibility of slightly higher than normal refraction on the day that that photograph was taken. Not much more than normal, but a little bit more than normal. And we got to that conclusion by drawing our 4 objects, spacing them with their to scale the correct heights for each object, our observation point, Form B, Blackpool, and the mountain. And then we spaced them at the correct distances relative to each other. And then we shifted them vertically so that the alignment matched the photograph. So they're located in depth to scale, and they're located vertically to match the photograph. And when we do that and see where we end up at the ground level, we end up with an arc that exceeds the radius of the Earth by an amount that would be within the range of normal atmospheric refraction conditions. So I thought it might be interesting to try coming about the results from this other direction, sort of top down, to see where it got us. It's not a perfect model. It's this particular SketchUp model is not a perfect model. It's not exactly the best tool for this exercise, but it's pretty good. And interestingly enough, it did pretty much end up and leave us and where we ended up coming at this from bottom up. I'm going to touch on just one last point here, and this has to do with perspective and the camera and view angles and so forth. SketchUp allows you to place a camera, which would be sort of your position in the geometry of the image. It allows you to do that through a command called position camera. And when I created this view, I did that and placed the camera at the top of our little Thurst-Aston Hill here, which is at the origin of the model. Now, that's not enough on its own to establish the view that we want. There's the question of the zoom, the field of view, the angle at which we're viewing. So when I'm working on my architecture projects, in SketchUp, I typically set the zoom angle at 60 degrees. That allows me to see a lot of my model up close. When I set this up in SketchUp at 60 degrees there, I just changed it to a 60-degree view angle. Basically, we are standing in the same position as before, but we have a wide angle lens on our camera now. I can change that zoom factor simply by typing Z, which is the zoom command, and then at the bottom right corner of the screen you might see it says field of view 60 degrees. I could type in 30, and we are still in exactly the same location within the model, but we have narrowed our field of view to 30 degrees, which means we've kind of zoomed in a little bit. We're standing closer, but it's like we're telescoping into the model. I'll decrease the field of view to 15 degrees and 5 degrees, which is where I had it for our preset view. This is 4 degrees. This is 3 degrees. And as you can see, the mountain and the tower and the dunes at Form B all maintain the same vertical relationships even as we zoom in. Our our position in the model has not changed. We're simply zooming in with our zoom lens here. 4, 5, I'll go out to 10. As you can see, no change in those relationships. So this is not a question of zoom having any impact on those relationships. Now, I doubt this is going to change anybody's minds, but I thought it might be an interesting way to come about the analysis from a different direction, sort of top down, recreating the image we see in the photo, and then looking at what that forces, or looking at what was necessary to recreate that image, and what that tells us about the surface under our feet. I guess that's enough. I think got my point across. Hopefully you all find this interesting, useful. If any of you out there have AutoCAD and feel like playing with this, you might try repeating it or finding another similar observation and doing the same. Thanks. If you haven't hit that like button, please do so. If you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have new subscribers. So come on by, join the party. Bye-bye.